In this Cavalry Animation tutorial, we'll take a look at how to create these fun callouts, and we'll be using a node called the Connect Shape node. At the end of the video, we'll take a look at some variations we could use with the Connect Shape node to get some interesting effects. I just want to get rid of all this stuff, so we're starting from scratch. And I'm going to click this rectangle tool and just click and drag out here a rectangle shape. Now I want round corners, so I find the corner area here. I can make this bigger so you can see it. Corner radius, we'll drag this out here. And once it gets to its limit, we're going to get this pill shape, which is good. And we could color this, so I could click on this fill, click on the swatch. I can make it a light red color. And I could also, if I want to save this, I could see my colors here, and I could just click and drag, and now I've got that saved as a swatch. The next thing I'll do is put some text in there. So click on my type tool and click somewhere right around here. Now I want to center it horizontally and center it vertically. So we've got that. And if I scale this up now, you can see I'm scaling from the center. I should also hold down Shift. Maybe I'll just raise it up a bit here. So we've got text in here, but I want it to mask out so it doesn't show up when it's outside of the rectangle or pill shape as it is now. So I'm going to take the rectangle in a second. I'll just make this smaller so we can see what's going on better. So we just take the rectangle, drag it onto the text shape, and hover over this mask thing that pops out, and then click on this connect to index. And it doesn't look like we have anything left from the background, but we just turn this eyeball on and it should work. And then we could drag this and you can see, okay, so now you have the freedom to animate this coming in from the side or scaling in or kind of bouncing, animate it however you want and not have to worry about it going outside the boundary. Okay, let's rename this. I'm going to select it and I'm going to press enter. And I'm going to call this, this will be our tag. And now I'll create another shape. So I'll click this circle here. And I'm going to just click and drag while I hold down Shift to constrain it. I'll call this the dot. Let's say this will be our dot, or you could call it target or something. But let's just call it dot. That'll make things less confusing later on. All right, so we have our elements and now we just need to connect them. Let's click this plus sign here, and you could click on this tab if it's not already selected, and we'll just start typing CONNE, and then we have the connect shape shows up here. We could double click on it and then click somewhere over here to close that window. Okay, so the connect shape looks like this strange symbol thing, but we're gonna change that right now. So I'm gonna Alt double click on it, and I'm gonna select my source, and I'm going to go from linear and I'm going to change that to submesh, and I'm going to do the same thing. Click target here and change that to submesh. Okay, and now we just need to connect these things here to it. So our source is our name tag here. So let's take our tag and click and drag that little circle dot thing and drop it onto the input shape. And then we'll go to our target field and click the little dot next to our dot layer and drag and drop that onto our input shape. That's the main setup here. Pretty simple. So let's now move our connect shape below everything else. All right, that's good. And I also want to parent my text to this shape here because it's going to need to go along with that. So I'll take my text shape, click and drag it on top of the tag. Now you can see I can move this wherever I want. I still have the freedom to move the text into a different position, and I can move my dot here. So this is basically a call out. We can just make it look a little bit nicer. If we now collapse this, I'll select Alt double click on the connect shape just to kind of reset it here. I want to find the stroke. So the stroke is a little bit thin. I'll increase the width. We could change the color here. So I can go to the color swatch. I could pick a different color, or I can click on one of my swatches here if I want something that looks a little bit different. That's good. We can make a little bit of an adjustment if we want by going to the shape and switching from linear to bezier. This is pretty interesting. This gives you a curve. So you'll have a curve and it will make it look a little bit more flexible. The only thing to note is there's not a lot of control over how this thing bends. So basically what it's going to do is always point the bend to the middle of your comp. And, you know, if it's not very bendy, it's not going to be noticeable, but If you need very specific control over this bend, you might want to try a different approach with maybe like the rubber hose, but this is a really quick and simple way to set this up. This current setup is creating a connection between the center points of each object, but we can change this. And if I Alt double click on my connect shape, I will go to the source and I'm going to change this from sub mesh. There's a bunch of different options here, but I'm going to change this to path, and I'm going to go to my target and do the same thing. Change that to path, and you'll see as you do that, you're breaking the connection to the input shapes. So let's go and reconnect those. So we got our name tag. We'll drop that onto the input shape under the source, and then we'll go to target. We'll take our dot and drag that onto the input shape over there. Now we got a much different look. So it's connecting at various different points. Let's take the stroke down a little bit so we can see things a little bit more clearly. Let's go into the settings for the source, and we can take a look at something called the travel, and you'll see this will travel the lines around, and we could adjust the length. And as you decrease that length, you'll see that it will kind of bunch the ends up together. And you have the same settings for the target that you can adjust, and you can also go in here under shape. So now these options under Bezier bias become available to us, and we could adjust the bend in that direction, or if I change this here, we can get the bend adjusted in this direction, and you don't want to move that, be careful. So click this and move it. So this could give you some really interesting stylized effects, maybe not great for callouts, but some interesting kind of designs. We could continue to refine this by, I'll double click on this so we could see it clearly. If we select the source, you'll see we've got this number here, 3. We could bring this up so we have more in this direction. We can go to the target. This is also 3. We could drop this down to maybe 1, or we could make a lot. Let's just keep this as 1. So we have this kind of connection here. I could also, well, let's bring a little bit more into here. And if I go to shape, I could find my blend mode here and go from normal to something like modulate. And you'll see we get a little bit of different look where the lines overlap each other. I think multiply also can work. Yeah, well, it's basically the same thing. And also we can go into our stroke settings, and we got our trim, which we can adjust if we want to have this kind of like a growing effect. And let's take this number up and get some more in here. If it's too much, it kind of all goes into one spot. You know, we also have the travel, which we could animate, so you can get some kind of effects like this. And if I hold on shift, as I drag this, I can get it to go in smaller increments. This could be an interesting effect while you animate those things and move this around. So a lot of different possibilities. And now for something totally different, let's delete everything here just to get a clean slate. And I'm gonna make some text, and I'll just Alt click on it actually so it's in the center of the screen. And we could center it up completely by clicking these 2 buttons here in settings. So let's scale this up, and I'll hold on shift. I wanna make a heavier font, so I'm gonna click this button here. I think Alpha Slab 1 will work. Now I'm going to take the fill, turn that off, take the stroke, turn that on. Maybe a thinner stroke will work, something like that. So let's put another connect shape in here, and I'll just double click on that. You don't need 2 different shapes. I could put the same shape in both the source and the target. So let's actually just do that right now. So I'm going to Alt double click on the connect shape, and I'm going to go to the source. I'm going to make this path again. And I'm going to go to target, make that also path. So now I'm going to connect the source. It will be this text shape, and we'll drop it into the input, and we'll go to target, take the text shape, click on that dot, drag and drop it in here. So now we've got an interesting effect. So let's take a look at what's going on. If we go to the source, we could take a look at the travel and see how this moves around. So that's okay, but let's see if we could get something better. First, let's go to stroke. Let's make it a different color, something that'll stand out a bit here. And let's make it also a little bit thicker. So we'll go to width, increase that just so we could see things a little bit better. And I'll change this from linear to Bezier. Now we'll get this scribbling effect, which is always fun. And we could look at the some of the things in here. See, if I hold down Control and drag that out, you can see changing this connection limit we'll kind of limit it to just the first letter mostly, and points per connection. You can see how that is affecting things here. So let's keep that up. Let's just go and see how this is traveling around. So it's traveling around this first letter, but it's connected to all the other letters. Let's look at the target and let's see how this travels around. So this is kind of affecting the letters that it's connected to. But let's go back to shape. Let's start to increase some of these values here. So as we do that, we're getting more connections throughout, and then we could go to points per connection and we could lower this. So now we get this kind of scribbly effect, and we can go to source. We've got a count set to 3, but let's raise this up, and let's also take this and put it below our text so we could actually read what's going on there. And we could go to our target. This is 3. We could bring this up, and we're getting a different look here. And again, we could adjust the travel, see how that, and it's going really fast because we got a lot of shapes moving. And if I hold down shift as I drag this, we can get a slower view of what this would look like. So that's interesting. Let's also go into the shape, and let's take our source bias here. Maybe I'll bring this down a bit, and I'll take this one and also bring that down a little bit. Let's see how we could adjust this by lowering this number and animating that. Can get an interesting effect just by changing this value here. We could also change this value here and have it animate on scribbling just by changing this value. So you can see you get some pretty nice effects without having to do a lot of work, just by adjusting some of these values here. Like this really heavy look here, and then I'll adjust this so it grows out a bit further. I should be holding control while I drag this to make it speed up. So we got a lot of coverage here. Now what I can do is go to the source, maybe bring the count down, maybe not that far down. For the source and for the target, let's bring this count down also a little bit here and see what kind of crazy variations we can get. I think that's a pretty fun look, and you could connect this to all kinds of other nodes. You could adjust the travel for one or the other here and see what kind of effects that you get. But this is just one of very many different variations you can get and fun things you could do with the connect shape node. If you found this helpful, you might also be interested in creating procedural text boxes. You can find that video on the link to the left. Or if you want to create some interesting trails from your text, the video from the right will do that.